welcome to our webinar. You've got Denis here, Denis O'Sullivan, you've got myself, Peter from Sigma Software Distribution. The details are there, we'll send them through at the end of the webinar as well. We're going to talk to you today about how to deliver security and compliance to your customers' SQL Server and SQL database environments, go through a couple of really good case studies, reference points of where some customers have been, where some end users have been caught out, and show how maybe they could remediate that and make sure they don't get caught out again in the future. Denis, I don't know if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself.
Yeah, hi folks. My name is Denis O'Sullivan. I'm a systems consultant with Quest Information and Systems Management. Previous to joining Quest, I was an Oracle database administrator for the bones of 10 years. So I have a lot of kind of experience in the database world. So basically, I'm a techie. I can kind of take you through any kind of technical questions or queries that you or your customers may have.
That's right, the guy who knows what's what. There we go. Cool. So introducing Quest and Sigma here. We've been together as a partnership for, must be 13 plus years. Gone through all the transformation of Quest, all the acquisitions of Quest, really delivering that best of breed technology from 4 different Quest business units, covering a whole range of things, from migration projects, you think migration, think Quest, think managing, maybe Microsoft platforms, Oracle databases, so on, stuff like that, third-party databases, stuff like that, think Quest, security, again, endpoint management, think Quest, we can help there, and planning for all of these stages of development, we can help out with that. We work really hand in hand with the channel. So Quest's preference all along is always to support the channel. So we try and work with the channel wherever we can. Quest has a ton of systems consultants, just like Denis, who are itching to get out there and support you from start to finish of the sale. So we never leave you isolated, and that's one of the really good things we do. Also, it's good to say on this webinar we are giving away a prize giveaway, so stay tuned. £150 worth of Amazon vouchers will be given away on this. To get involved, please could you put your name and your email address in the Q&A box, and that way we know who's on, and then we can run the randomization at the end to see who wins the grand prize. Cool, let's kick on. Denis, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thanks, Peter. So today we're focusing on SQL Server security and compliance. So, when you're talking about, let's say, at an organizational level about, say, security and compliance, obviously you have to take into account stuff like your application security, your network security, your Office 365 security, encryption of laptops, who has access to print and what they print, all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of just focused in on the database and ultimately data as to what is stored on the database. And this is, Mecca for a hacker, because all your information is going to be stored, all your critical information is stored in your database. So, this is what they, really want to get at. So just looking at the terminology for a second. So first of all, data compliance, as you can see here on screen, is the practice of ensuring that sensitive data is organized and managed in such a way that it enables organizations to meet enterprise business rules along with legal and governmental regulations. The obvious ones in this part of the world are GDPR and PCI, which is to do with anyone that processes credit card information. So this is a kind of what I would call a line of business function. This is not a technical function. This is making sure you adhere to your own enterprise business rules as well as legal and governmental regulations. So, depending on the size of the company, they might have, something like a CSO, which is a chief security officer. They may have a compliance and legal team, or something like that. So, but generally, they're not necessarily technical people. It's more of a legal compliance role. Then you have the concept of data security. So data security is when protective measures are put in place to keep unauthorized access out of computers, websites, and in particular, in our case, databases. This process also provides a mechanism for protecting data from loss or corruption. So this is the implementation, I guess, of security and making sure you adhere to compliance. So this is a technical role. And in the world of the database, the techie is the database administrator, DBA. And when we talk to customers, we could be talking to a compliance team, or we could be talking to a DBA team, or we could have, you know, both in the room or on the call. So I suppose what we're focusing on in this overlap of the Venn diagram, this where legal meets techie. And it can be quite a challenging conversation, to be honest, because they use very different terminology. They're coming at it from very different angles. But this is where, I guess, tech and legal meet. So it's important, especially when you talk about data and database security and compliance, your number one kind of threat comes from within your organization. So identifying the enemy within. And if you look over here on the left-hand side, you can see where are the threats coming from. And 58% of your threats come from within your organization. So this is employees, ex-employees who still maybe have logons or have laptops or something like that, as well as third parties, so partners who you've given access to within your systems, as opposed to 42% from outside. Now, of this 58% of internal threat, you can see in the middle column here, the key internal security threats are inadvertent human error. So someone, you know, just making a mistake. Secondly, lack of awareness or understanding around IT security and threats. So that kind of stuff like phishing emails that you get in, it looks like it's coming from a colleague within your organization, but in fact it's malicious. And thirdly, introduction of viruses or malware via personal devices. So you bring your laptop to or your laptop or your phone or tablet to work, connect internally to the network, and if you have malware on your device, you've given them access to your network. And then over on the right-hand column, identifying security threats. So only 37% of organizations who were surveyed are confident they can very accurately determine the number of IT security instances in the last year. So only 37% can confidently say that they know of all the security threats. 34% think they can accurately determine the type of incident. So again, you know, what type of incident? Was it internal, external? Was it through phishing? Was it through a kind of an exposed network port, whatever it might be? And then only 26% can accurately identify the source of the incident. So you might know that someone has, you know, deleted data or captured data, but only 26% can say for certain where that came from. So when it comes to the database, you have to consider, you know, not only the external threats, but very much the internal threats. The external threats are largely, you know, secured by application and network level security and compliance. But you, obviously your own employees are within that kind of bubble, so they will have access to your data. And I'll expand on this a bit more in a moment. So when we talk about data security and compliance, really what we're talking about is PII data. This is what the kind of industry term for the type of data. It's personally identifiable information. So that's obviously, as the name suggests, information that you can identify a person from. So their name, their address, date of birth, medical records, credit card information, email address, all that type of information. And this is what GDPR covers mainly, is personally identifiable information. GDPR does not care about all the other data in your database, such as your own, you know, product information or anything like that, information about your offices, all that type of information. It's only the you know, information that is related to humans and can personally identify them. So you have to focus on ensuring that you're going above and beyond in terms of securing this data and obviously complying with stuff like GDPR and PCI compliance. Obviously, you want to secure all the data. It's not like you leave the other data completely exposed, but there's extra levels of security you can go to around PII data. So there's a few areas you need to focus on. So the first one is the data stored securely? So is this PII data stored securely? So for example, are your database files encrypted? So a database is essentially all the data in a database is stored on a file on a server. And if a hacker gets into that server, so they're able to do a network hack, and they get onto that server and they copy those database files off the server, would they just be able to open those files and be able to read the data, or is it encrypted? Also, is the data obfuscated or masked? So examples of that is, say, for example, if you log on to an application and it shows your password, it doesn't show your password in plain text. It shows it kind of with stars or dots. Similarly to your credit card number, usually it shows 12 X's and then the last 4 digits of your credit card number. That's obfuscated or redacted or masked data. So do you have that in place on your particular database as well? So even if a malicious actor, as they're called, accesses the data, to make sure it's encrypted first of all, and also is it redacted, so they can't actually read it properly. Secondly, is it access controlled? So is access to the PII data granted on a limited basis? So you can give someone access to your database, but you can also within the database define exactly what tables they have access to. So can you ensure that only people working in HR have access to your employees' salary information? Can you ensure that only people working in accounts receivable have access to your customer information? Can you ensure that only people in accounts payable have access to your supplier information and their bank details, etc.? So again, this is about the internal threat that you have as well, to make sure employees don't have access to data they shouldn't have. Because again, not only them, but if their username and password gets exposed and a hacker gets access to that, at least again, they won't have access to all the data. Is access and editing of this data audited? So are you keeping a record of any time someone accesses and or edits this data? So if Peter Brimble goes into his HR system and changes his annual salary from 500,000 a year to 600,000 a year, is that recorded? Will a compliance team or a database administrator get notified that a change was made to that particular field? And this is the area of auditing that I suppose we particularly will focus on later in the presentation. So you can audit all these PII fields to make sure you're aware if anyone that shouldn't access it, Has someone queried a customer's credit card number, for example, and they might not ever need to query that information. So you can audit anytime someone accesses or manipulates or edits that data as well. Then where else is this data stored? So this is something that gets forgot about all the time. And I was working with a major bank, one of the biggest banks in the world, in fact, on GDPR compliance about 2 years ago. We were focusing on the Oracle side of things as opposed to SQL Server, but the rules are the same across any database platform. But we were putting all these rules in place, and over lunchtime, I asked them, by the way, what's your backup strategy? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you back up your database, you're backing up all the data and all the PII data. So are you encrypting your database backups files? And his direct quote was, holy crap, I never even thought about that. So they are taking nightly backups, weekly backups, monthly backups, annual backups. They're storing these all in a server. And they're stored in almost like plain text, essentially. So any hacker that got access to that server would be able to, copy and paste those files, open those files, and directly access all the bank's customers' data. So that's something that they had to rectify. Also, have you PII data stored in non-production databases? So very often development teams would ask DBAs, could you clone production back to a test environment, because we need to do testing against real data and real volumes of data. So that's something that happens quite regularly. But if you do that, again, you're moving PII data out of production and into non-production, where your security might be much more lax and again, not audited to the same level. So are you masking or obfuscating that data when you move it back to a non-production environment? Is my database configured correctly? So is the database regularly patched and upgraded? So I can tell you about Quest, for example, our internal software security, software delivery lifecycle. We hire hackers to do what's called penetration testing. So I think we do it on an annual basis, that we hire these world-class hackers to see if they can hack our products, Toad, Apex, Foglight, etc. And Microsoft do the exact same thing with SQL Server. They have their own internal hackers who work for them full time, and they'll also have kind of contracted hackers in to see can they access the database, can they find a vulnerability in the security of SQL Server database. And they always will. Every single system in the world has a vulnerability and has bugs of some sort. So they will they will find security vulnerabilities. And what Microsoft do is every quarter they fix these security vulnerabilities, package them up, and release what's called a quarterly security patch set. So every 3 months, you have to patch all your databases because these vulnerabilities exist. So, is that being done, or is the database administrator being lazy and not necessarily patching all the databases on a quarterly basis? And then finally, are you storing unnecessary PII data? And this is something that I see quite often, to be honest. So, for example, you might be storing your customers' date of birth. You might have captured it for some reason, and you're storing it. But do you need to store it? Because each column of PII data needs to be, it needs to be stored securely. It needs to, be encrypted. You need to make sure you're doing obfuscation or masking on it. You need to make sure access to it is controlled. You need to audit anytime someone accesses it. You need to encrypt the backup of that column. You need to make sure it's obfuscated when it goes to non-production. There's a lot of overhead attached to storing PII data. So the less PII data you can store, the better. So again, do you need the customer's date of birth? Maybe you just need their kind of age range, whether they're in the 25 to 35 bracket, or maybe just their year of birth. So they're born in a particular year, and again that might be a less sensitive column to store. It's not necessarily personally identifiable. So again, you have to think about that. Do you really need this PII data because of the associated overhead with it? So these are the areas that a database administrator and compliance team need to think about when they're looking at SQL Server security and compliance. So now I have a few examples, just 4 examples to take you through. And these are not Facebook, Google, British Airways, these mega companies that seem to get kind of fined every few months. These are, maybe not small to medium businesses, but, moderately sized companies. So, GDPR is basically what I'm saying is not just for the mega companies. It's not just the ones you hear about on the news. It applies to everyone, and everyone could face fines. So looking at Morrison's supermarket, you might remember this from the news, where supermarket chain Morrison's fell victim to an internal attack that led to 100,000 employees' personal details being linked. An employee, Andrew Skelton, leaked the payroll data of Morrison's entire workforce, including bank account details and salaries. Thousands of staff have been awarded compensation payouts. The attack is reported to have cost the supermarket chain £2 million, and Skelton is serving 8 years for the crime. This breach happened because Morrison's allowed employees too much access to sensitive information. Now, as it turns out, Andrew Skelton was actually a senior internal auditor at Morrison. So his job was to stop these particular leaks. Now he ended up having a grudge with the company and leaked this information. But just because he's a senior internal auditor doesn't mean he should have access to the employees' salaries and bank account details. He had no reason to have access. He should have access to anyone who else is accessing it. So he should be reported about that information, but he necessarily did not need to know their salaries. Brighton and Sussex University Hospital. So 232 decommissioned hard drives containing patient data were stolen. The hospital was fined $325,000 over the theft of thousands of patients' data. The sensitive information, which included medical results, were reportedly put on sale on eBay. The thief accessed the sensitive data by stealing hard drives that were not encrypted and were due to be destroyed. So again, if they were put in a bin designed to be sent off to a specialist company to be destroyed securely. But obviously the thief got access to these before they were moved on to the company to destroy them. And when he accessed the hard drives, all the data was stored in plain text. If that was encrypted, it would have been absolutely useless to him. He would have just seen absolute gibberish. And with the levels of encryption these days, he would never have been able to hack that data. The next one is Vision Direct. So a hacker stole card payment details of an estimated 6,600 customers. Vision Express were storing the CVV code. So this is an absolute no-go in terms of credit card and PCI compliance. You should never store the CVV. Even if you use something like Google Pay or anything like that, it will always ask you for your CVV code. So the full card numbers, expiry dates, and CVV numbers were accessed in a data breach that lasted 5 days. So the hacker was in their system for 5 days, scraping all these credit card information. Again, first of all, there's two issues there. They shouldn't have been storing all that information, because once the hacker got access to it, he had all the information you need to use the credit card details. Secondly, it lasted 5 days. They should have been notified within seconds or minutes that someone was accessing this data. And again, there may have been a security breach of, dozens or maybe even potentially hundreds of customers in that short space of time, but at least they would have been able to act quickly and stop it reaching the 6,600 level of customer information. The next one is, and the final one is Dixon's car phone. So hackers access customer records that included sensitive information such as names, addresses, and email addresses. Initially, the retailer estimated 1.2 million customer records were compromised. However, over a year later, Dixon's car phone confirmed that the breach affected 10 million customers. It took the organization a year to realize the exact number of compromised accounts. The main reason for the delay in recognizing the extent of the damage was poor system visibility and inadequate even threat detection. So they simply did not have the systems in place and the auditing in place to know exactly how much data was accessed. They knew there was a breach of some sort, but they weren't able to, drill down into that and say exactly how much was accessed. So they're the particular examples. So moving on to, I suppose, why we're all here, why I'm talking here is because obviously Quest Information Management have offerings in this. And particularly for SQL Server, we have a portfolio of tools called ApexSQL with a tilt towards security and compliance. So the flagship product of ApexSQL, and particularly security and compliance, is ApexSQL Audit. So ApexSQL Audit is an auditing and compliance tool that ensures full auditing of SQL Server databases by collecting information about who is accessing what data and when and how they access it. So we can tell you who, what, when, and how they access data. Secondly, ApexSQL Manage. So ApexSQL Manage is a central console for discovering, managing, and documenting SQL Server databases. So this is all about the, I mentioned the patching and upgrading, making sure that you're aware of all the instances you have, making sure they're all on a particular version, patch set, and making sure the configuration is correct. And then finally, we have ApexSQL Mask. ApexSQL Mask gives you the ability to identify and classify PII data in your SQL Server databases. It also has the ability to obfuscate this PII data in non-production databases. So ApexSQL Mask can scan your database and identify tables and columns that contain PII data. So they use naming conventions, they use regular expressions to identify data. You know, they'll identify the pattern of an email address. There's an @ symbol and a dot in a particular order. Same with credit card information. You'll know by the order postcodes as well. So we can scan that and then you can classify. So then you can classify a particular column as storing an email address. You can classify it as storing a credit card number. You can classify it as storing a postcode, etc. So that's what the classifications mean. And then you have the ability to obfuscate it. And I'll show you this, that, you know, okay, I have a column storing all first names. I just want to jumble up those first names. So it will obfuscate them, change the first names, but it will still be meaningful data. So looking at ApexSQL Audit in a bit more detail. So ApexSQL Audit, you know, it allows you to have your ability to answer very detailed questions about what's going on in your organization's databases, can make or break a compliance audit or security investigation. So as a DBA, and again, we're focusing on the DBA because we develop tools for database professionals. A DBA needs to be able to continuously track and log SQL Server database events across the organization. So again, you decide what events you want to track, such as, you know, inserts, updates, deletes, querying data. You select what tables, you select what columns you're interested in. You need to be able to forensically identify who did what, where, and when across your database. So they're the questions that are going to be answered if there's or asked if there's a data breach. The auditors or security team or legal team or even the police, if it comes to that, will be asking you that information. You need to be able to quickly identify whether an event exposed sensitive or personal data. Okay, they've accessed our database, but what did they actually get access to? Did they get access to PII data that wasn't secure, or did they just get gibberish information that we're not too worried about? And you have to be able to document information for auditing purposes. So anytime you go through an audit, what auditors want is documentation upon documentation upon documentation. And luckily, with, you know, our products, you can pretty much at the click of a 4 or 5 buttons, you can document your entire database out to PDF or Word or something like that, and just hand it over to the auditors. An important point here, so ApexSQL includes real-time alerting, so you can quickly react to an intrusion. So again, I don't want to know about an intrusion that happened last week. I need to know, you know, that it happened 10 seconds ago, 30 seconds ago. So as soon as Peter goes in, accesses the employees table and sets that update statement to update his salary, I want to get an email straight away to say that this happened in real time. And again, so if a hacker is inside and he's selecting my data, again, I'll be able to react straight away and you know, reduce the amount of data he's able to access. And from a compliance point of view, then in terms of, you know, your auditors or your compliance team, ApexSQL Audit offers different compliance templates for different regulatory instruments, such as GDPR and PCI and SOX. So it can be used to comply with a number of different data privacy regulations. It's very useful. There's kind of templates built into the tool. So if someone wants, if you get audited for GDPR purposes, you can run the pre-built GDPR report. It's a template. It'll take a little tweaking, but it's largely built for you. So you're not kind of starting with a blank piece of paper. Looking at ApexSQL Manage in a bit more detail. So ApexSQL Manager allows you to discover and manage SQL Server instances, perform health checks, documentation, and comparison. So you can discover SQL Server instances. So this is a big kind of pain point around SQL Server administration is, sorry, just drop my mic, is database sprawl. So it's an issue a lot of people hit where DBAs don't know the extent of their SQL Server estate. So what ApexSQL Manager will do is it'll run across your network and find all the SQL Server instances and all the databases within those instances that exist within your network. And then it will report on, what version they're on, what patch they're on. So you'll easily be able to identify if any of them are running a very old version or a patch set for that particular database that might not be secure. It'll also run a health check to check the configuration. So is it configured securely? Are the necessary, security configuration settings in place? And you can do the documentation. This is where I said you can, at a few clicks of a button, document your entire database. You can enforce best practices across your databases. You can document it, manage the login. So again, you might have multiple different databases and you have the same people logging into all these different databases. So rather than having to set up individual logins for all these different databases and manage them individually, you can set up a login that can access all these different databases. So you can just centralize the management of those logins. It just reduces kind of duplication of work and potential kind of human error then. And set email notifications of specific events. So again, if a particular database is behind on patch sets or something like that, or fails a particular health check, a configuration health check, just alert me so I don't have to be logging in and doing manual checks all the time. So that's the idea behind ApexSQL Manage. And we'll jump into these tools in a moment. And then the final one is ApexSQL Mask. So ApexSQL Mask is a data anonymizing tool which scans your SQL Server databases and identifies where PII data exists. So again, as a DBA, I need to be able to simplify and automate the process of identifying PII data across my SQL Server instances. I don't want to manually have to go through every single table and every single column of every table to see, does it store PII data in any of the rows within it. I want a tool that will just scan all the tables, all the columns, all the rows to see where that data exists, and then classify them as being, okay, this column or this row contains email addresses, this one contains credit card numbers, this contains first names or surnames, whatever it might be. I need to be able to customize the search criteria according to our PII data definition. So again, the way you store data might be different from customer to customer. So they need to be able to create their own classification. They might want to cover data that may not necessarily be PII data, that might be sensitive data, such as product pricing or intellectual property of some sort. So they might want to include extra fields that are maybe outside the remit of GDPR. I didn't be able to mask or redact that data that's identified according to its usage. So again, once I move that data to another database, that I can obfuscate it, so it's still secure. So what I'm going to do now, before we go to that, is I'm going to jump in and do a couple of, just show you the tools in action. I just need to check my battery because I was explaining to Peter, I am currently sitting in my car due to a power outage in my house. So I'm doing all this from my car using my 4G Wi-Fi, and so far so good, I hope. So this is ApexSQL Audit, and I want to set up a particular auditing on my instance called MW ApexSQL 1. So what I do is I go to Configure, and then I set exactly what I want to audit. Now this process can take a bit of time, to be honest. There's a lot of setup, but the good thing is you only have to do it once, and you can move this using templates. You can set up a template and apply the template to multiple different instances, but this will take a bit of time deciding exactly what you want to audit. Now, just for the sake of saving time, I set up just this particular rule here, and this rule will audit anytime someone logs into my database called AdventureWorks 2012, accesses the object called person, so this is a table called person, and runs a query on that table. So you can see you can do multiple different things here. You set up a kind of a rule. So I could say, anyone that queries or deletes or inserts or updates data there. So just this rule here will trigger an auditing event anytime someone queries the person table on the database AdventureWorks. So I just want to test that particular setup. To see the results, I can go to Reports, As I mentioned, there's pre-built reports, so I could create, say, a GDPR or a PCI report. I'm just going to do the default complete auditing report and just do auditing on that particular table. Person table, and I just want where it is query, where someone does a select, and I'll say, just to save time, the last 24 minutes. So no events found. So what I'm going to go do then is execute this. So I'll select the top 123 rows from this table. So I'm accessing this particular table. So I've now accessed that data. I'm not sure if it'll pick it up straight away. We'll say we'll go to the last 10 minutes or something like that. Apply and preview. Sometimes it takes 30 or seconds or so. Just make sure I have. There we go. It came in there. You see the top 123. The exact same statement as I ran in here is listed here. And I can also see, if I just get rid of that for a moment, all the information. So again, I need to know the who did it, what did they access, how did they access it, or when did they access it. So first of all, when. So this is the exact timestamp down to the millisecond that it was accessed. What did they access? So they accessed this server, this database, this particular schema, and this particular table, and they ran this particular statement. Who did it? The who is the this particular logon, and how they did it was through this application, through Management Studio. And what they did, they ran a select statement, and it ran successfully. So I can grab all the information there. And again, through alerting, I can set up alerting. So instead of having to come in here and run a report each time, that it will just send me an email to say, you know, user, in this case was mwild, logged into this database, ran this select statement. So I'll get that sent to me by email. And again, I can take the necessary actions. I might need to go, oh crap, I need to, you know, lock this user. So go straight in and lock this user account, so the hacker no longer has information or something like that. So again, if you go back to, if I expand this out to the last 10 days, this could actually take a while, and hit preview on that. Again, you can see a lot more activity happen there on that particular one. So that's really how auditing works. You first of all, you configure what you want audited. So you select the particular criteria. You don't want to audit everything because it will just be a massive overhead. So you just pick out the PII columns that you want audited to keep it as slim as possible. All that is shipped off to another database, a secure database, and then you can run your reports and set up your alerts on that and see exactly who, what, when, and where in terms of auditing. So that's how audit works, really. Moving on then to ApexSQL Manage. I think I have it open here. I do indeed. So I mentioned, since it's open here, I'll talk about the health checks. So I mentioned one of the key criteria is checking whether your SQL Server database is configured correctly. So we have a set of rules here. And if I look at this particular database, I can't remember how many rules. I think it's about 100, well, 90 rules maybe. And I can see here there's 21 issues. And I can look at all the issues here. Auditing logon failures should be enabled. Any other security ones, I can go through them all. There's a certain section on security, yeah, SQL Server auditing, logon failures, stuff like that. So I can see, you know, all the issues. Some are high severity, some are medium, some are low severity. I can right click and ignore it if I want. But these are all the configuration mismatches and issues, potential vulnerabilities within my database that I should look at rectifying. Excuse me. And again, I can run this on all my different instances. Then you have the option of comparing. So for example, these two instances, I would have expected them to be configured the same, but you can see here I have 18 issues on this particular instance and 19 on this. So I could hit a compare, and it will compare the configuration of those two instances to see what's actually different there. I can also run the documentation. So again, if I want to document a particular database, again, it can ship out all the necessary documentation to Word or PDF. Let me open it, see what it could be. Yeah, it's so it's a very boring document, but this is what auditors require. So it lists all the parameters, all the configuration settings of the databases and servers. Again, you will just need this for auditing purposes. Incredibly bland, boring document, but saves a lot of time. I mentioned the inventory as well. So being able to, this we can go off and scan your entire network. I can look for different types of databases, so analysis services, integration services, reporting services, specify my network domain or domains, or look across a particular set of IP addresses and stuff like that, and find all the instances that exist. So it's found all these instances before, and it gives me all the information. Create our SQL Server, they're all 2017. What edition are they on? They're all developer edition. The IP of the server, so this is the server that they're on. This is the port they're accessed through. This is the bill number of the database. So even they're all 2017, you can see there's a number of different bills. And this is the latest update in terms of the patch set. So just wait for this to return, but I could click on this. This is a hyperlink, and it will take me out to the Microsoft website that shows me the actual patch set of that. And this is the fully qualified domain name. Not all of these have fully qualified domain names, so that's why some of them are blank. So again, this allows me to do an inventory check. So find all my instances and tell me, the important information from a maintenance point of view in terms of what server they're on, what version they're on, what patch set they're on, etc. So yeah, it's opening this now, and you can see this is cumulative patch update 22 for SQL Server 2017, and you can look at all the other patch updates along the left hand side here. So that gives me a good idea of my entire instance. And I mentioned the health check as well. So again, I can run a health check against any one of these. So that's what manage does. It's just kind of this cockpit, the central console for just being able to get a handle on your SQL Server estate. Database sprawl is a major issue for SQL Server professionals, and just getting a handle of your entire estate. A lot of them don't know what they don't know. I have no idea how many instances are out there, what version they're on, what edition they're on, what patch set they're on. So being able to get all that into a single pane of glass, run your configuration health check. So again, what vulnerabilities exist within my estate, being able to document the individual databases and instances, and then if there is differences between them, comparing the differences and seeing what the differences is. And then, of course, you don't want to be doing all this manually. You can schedule this to run. So, create a schedule that, every few months go off and discover new instances, every week run a health check, or maybe every month run documentation and stuff like that. So that's the idea behind the management tool. And finally, I don't have it open here. Do I have it installed? I do. ApexSQL Mask. So this is the tool that will find the sensitive data in your databases, allow you to tag it, so classify it as being, a certain type of PII data, and then being able to take the necessary actions against it. I'm trying to remember my databases now. Let's look at something like AdventureWorks would be an easy one. So it's going to log in and it's going to scan now my entire AdventureWorks databases, look at all the tables, look at all the columns, and see where it can find PII data. It's a very small database, so it shouldn't take long, but obviously on larger databases, this can be a very time-consuming task. Plus, it also feels a lot longer when you're sharing your screen.
See how useful these tools are, though. They look really good, obviously, at improving compliance and you know, the ability to meet security if you had an audit or something like that.
Absolutely, really, yeah. And I know probably people on this call, you're maybe not database administrators, but I was a database administrator. I've gone through ISO audits. I've gone through Oracle compliance audits. They're horrendous. It's just absolutely, you know, soul destroying task. You know, even documenting your databases, if you don't have something to document your database like ApexSQL Manage does, you're talking about days of work saved. Being able to do that again, the manage tool identifying all your database. So I remember giving a report to Oracle that said, oh yeah, we have 20 instances of Oracle, and it turned out we had 22 instances. There were 2 I never even knew about, and again, it just caused so much hassle in the audit and just wasted a lot of time asking questions about those 2 instances that ApexSQL Manage, something like that, would have just picked up on straight away. Okay, so just moving back to this. So what it's done here, so I'm on my classified tab here. These are all the PII columns that it's found on my database. Now, if I go back to my all columns, you can see there's lots of other columns it hasn't considered to be PII, such as the database version, the object name of that one, error numbers. 99.99% of your data is not PII data, but you need stuff like job title, date of birth, gender. You need to make sure those are captured. Now, we will miss some because of maybe naming conventions or something like that. So let me find stuff that I may have missed. Just my luck now, it'll have caught everything. Okay, it's missed out on something like middle name for some reason. I might want to secure that as well, but it hasn't picked up on that. So you can see here, it's classified the title as being a title, the first name as being a first name, the last name as being a last name, and it has pre-built masks for these. So anytime it finds a last name, it applies this mask, and you can see it before and after here on the left hand side. So this is the original data, the last name data in my database. When I run this mask, this is what the data will look like. So you can see they're all meaningful surnames, but they're not real, they're not accurate. So it just puts in random data. The benefit of that is that you still, in non-production environment, you still have meaningful data to test against and to run reports against and stuff like that to make sure your code is running correctly. But it's not PII data. It's it's been jumbled up. It's been obfuscated. The same with something like a first name. You can see all the original first names, and it's jumbled up the surnames. Maybe something like a state province. So this is American data. So these are all the American state provinces. And you can see it's put in different ones. It's actually put in a 3-letter one there. But if I want to add my own one for my middle name, it hasn't picked that up, but I want that masked. So what I do then is I go to Manage. I go to Create a new mask. Do I want to do that at column level, so a naming convention, or do I want to look at the data and go with column and just say a middle name? I'm going to use one of the predefined ones. So these are all the predefined ones. You can see there's ones around products, personal information, payment information. So you can see, credit card expiry dates, credit card numbers, stuff like that, Swift codes, a bunch of IP or IT ones, such as like your IP address and stuff like that, health information. But I'm going to go to personal information, and there isn't one for middle name. It doesn't appear. Let me just double check. There isn't one for middle names, but I know my middle name is essentially a first name. So I'm going to use that one. And then I'm going to apply it to, so I never checked on the column. So I have to come out of all of this, embarrassingly, and find my column again. Here we go. So I need to check that on. You can see it's put manual in as a classification, so it's a manual classification. And again, I can go in here and say middle name. I'm going to use the predefined personal one for first name. And I'm going to apply it to my column called middle name. So just move it over to the right. Click OK, click OK, click OK. And now it has, so if I go, it has secured that. So again, if I go down and find it, what I'll do is if I go to my classified tab now, it just filters those out. You can see here my middle name manual is brought in my mask that I created. I've been lazy here. I should have actually. It's just storing a first letter, so I actually just could put in a different mask there that just stores a letter. But you get the idea of how it actually works, and you can create your own masks. If you want to create a new mask and it doesn't exist in the predefined ones, you can create your own mask using regular expressions or a randomization or a particular SQL script or something like that as well. So you can create your own masks. So then if I apply this mask, if I go to process, what it will do is it will actually update the database. So you never run this in production because you don't want it to update production data, because it will actually, overwrite the data. You use this in non-production, this particular task. But this is very useful just for identifying the PII data that exists in your production database. I told Peter I'd leave 5 minutes at the end, so that's where I am now. And sorry, this.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that, Dennis. So we're really useful. The tools look really good. I hope everyone agrees there, especially as I know personally from my own experience, I've had so many emails, and I'm sure all of you have as well, over the past year or so saying, oh, your data was part of X organization that was compromised. Be careful, watch out, all that kind of stuff. I think I've had EasyJet, I think, was compromised as part of Exeter University, who've recently lost data through an application being compromised. And a couple other ones as well, but they keep losing my data is what I'm saying. But how amazing would it be if, rather than them going, oh, I'm sorry, we've lost your data, what are you going to do about it, if they could go to me and they could say, Peter, we've been compromised, but you know what, your data is masked, safe, it's encrypted, we've audited, we know how it happened, here you go, there you go, it's all done. So on the BA one, that was the most recent story, people still don't really know how it happened. People are still trying to go, oh, how did that actually happen? How did that happen? You could answer that so easily with this tool here, if that data was from a SQL database. So from that point of view, thank you, Denis. That's an incredible tool, and hopefully we can do some good work together with our partners. Talking to our customers about that. What's in it for you anyway? One of the great things with Quest is you've got tons of consultants like Denis around the clock there. You've got tons of sales professionals as well. We're based in UK and Ireland, so you've got people who talk the language really well, know the industry experts in database technologies. So you don't need to know this tool inside and out. All you need to do is know, I know someone who can help secure those databases for my customers. Quest can do that. I'm going to get onto Peter, I'm going to get onto Denis, I'm going to tell them, look, let's do this. Let's try and work out how we can help my customer meet X compliance, secure X database. And it makes it a really nice and easy sale for you, to be honest, because all you have to do is find the opening there, and we will do the rest of the work, and we'll support you all the way with that as well. So that's really good. We have use of campaigns, really good campaigns, and battle cards as well, as I say there. To help you find and open up those opportunities. We also have a good level of discount on all Quest products, including ApexSQL for our partner base. You can get 20% discount there from the list price, which is ready to go. Quest will obviously support you on that throughout. So potentially a really good discount there, margin potential for you guys. We also give up to 10% back as rebate. So from a top-down point of view, even better if you see the rebate, but if not, from a company point of view, top-down, that could be really useful. If you're delivering an extra 10% back to your company. Beyond that, we have frequent spiff activities. So if you want to earn that bit of extra money for Christmas shopping or whenever it's someone's birthday, that's always a really useful thing. In fact, we're doing one at the moment that may be worth getting involved with around our kind of Quest Blitz Day activities, prospecting day activities, where Quest have laid money aside to support the channel in demand generation. And obviously you'll have someone like Denis and myself there holding your hand throughout all of that. So some really good ways to make a bit of extra money for yourself there. Beyond that, Quest are a partner you can trust. We've been, supporting best of breed technology for quite some time. We also have a channel preference as well. So, when you bring an opportunity to Quest's attention, Quest will support you with it through stage 1 all the way to close, and they will continue to support you in that account in the future. And that's something you cannot say for all vendors, but you can say for Quest. That's a really good thing, and probably music to all of your ears as well. We've got great customer satisfaction, a really good customer retention, and a track record of delivering best of breed technologies since the 80s. So Quest is a really well-known brand. If you talk to any of your database guys about Quest, chances are they will know of Quest. If they don't know of Quest, they'll know of Toad, which is probably one of our flagship products. Really good way to get in with those customers. Just, bring back that nostalgia value. These guys have probably been using Toad 30 years ago and they still know of it now. So really good, best of breed technologies there. Anyway, that's that slide done. Don't know if you want to go on to the next one, Denis. Right, thank you very much for attending. We've got a question here that I can probably answer, but Denis, you may want to add your bit as well. Sure. Is there a single tool that contains all 3 of the ApexSQL products covered in this demonstration? Yeah, do you want to take
what
it,
I will
Denis?
say, at the moment, no. The next release of ApexSQL Manage in the next couple of months will incorporate mask within it. So the ApexSQL, the idea is the ApexSQL Manage tool will become a centralized cockpit for all the DBA tasks. So the mask feature is the next feature to get incorporated. So we've done the inventory check, we've done the documentation, we've done the health checks, we've done the comparisons, creating snapshots. Mask is the next one. Audit, I doubt that audit will ever get incorporated into it, just because it's such a large product in itself. No, never say never, but possibly not that one.
Yeah, that's right. We do have a DBA suite bundle, and we also have a developer suite bundle as well, which includes quite a lot of the products separately. So if you were comparing it to maybe your Idea SQL management suite or your Redgate developer suite, we've got those solutions there. They are in a bundle there. Obviously I can send across the details after this here as well. I guess the great thing to say about the ApexSQL products is, we've got a product for almost everything in terms of SQL. So, whereas you may get 5 or so products with the Idea SQL management suite, you're getting 9+ products in the ApexSQL developer DBA stuff, and up to 20 products in the larger suite. So we do have those suites, those pack SKUs already built, so you can buy them together. I guess just in terms of integrations of the products, they're still separate applications, but as you saw from Denis opening up those applications, it wasn't too much of a challenge. So there we go. Cool. I don't think we've got any other questions on here, and we have reached 12 o'clock, so we might have to cut it short. However, I will send across my email after this here. Denis's details too, I'll attach on there. Literally, if you have any questions, ping it across to us. We will help out. We'll be there to support you on this here. And thank you for joining. Denis, do you have anything else to add?
No, not really. Look, my email's address is on the screen there. If you are talking to someone and they have any technical questions, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to support.